again, welcome to another edition of CropLife Retail Week Virtual Edition. Once again, in the in the wilds of suburban Cleveland, Ohio. Welcome back. Say we had our 30 seconds of spring, I think, a week ago, and then we immediately launched into summer. So it's a little less so today, but we had 4 or 5 days in the well into the 80s, which was for me in a century home with no air conditioning was wildly entertaining. How are you doing, sir? There.
Oh, we were fine. I've got central air, so that wasn't much of a deal. And I know though, but I am getting a little bit of bunker fever, I guess you would call it. I've actually spent the last 2 days talking to my dog Lucky, trying to get her to say the word milk. So far, no success. And if anyone out there in our viewership understand that reference, I will be thoroughly, utterly impressed. Okay. I take it you don't, based on the blank stare you're giving me. So.
No, I don't. Usually when we're talking about stuff, some weird apocalyptic movie or some past thing that we immediately connect on. So no, I don't. So.
You're in the ballpark, but I think you must have missed this one. So.
All right. Well, let's carry on. So there wasn't a lot hot this week in terms of news from the retail side, other than I know folks are still have finished or are doing particularly well, getting things through the planting season. I think there's heat. Heat's been coming to the Midwest this week and through the weekend. So hopefully that gets some crops moving and gets us out of this. We get out of this some of the wet areas that we've seen in certain spots. But I know there was some news on the bear front from the standpoint of the lawsuit. Now, if you want, I know Eric, you've been following us pretty closely, so I'll let you take it.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, there were at last count, I think about 85,000 to 90,000 lawsuits filed against the glyphosate that Bayer inherited when they made the purchase of Monsanto. And I know that Bayer has been working behind the scenes with litigators on trying to get some type of a settlement in place so that all those lawsuits don't end up in court. And we heard earlier this week that apparently these talks are ongoing and that some progress is being made, but nothing official yet. However, the anticipation is, based on the fact the Bayer stock price was actually going up about 3 or 4% earlier this week, that something will happen here, hopefully maybe in the next week or two.
Yeah, the preference is for science to prevail, but unfortunately this is going to have to be something they settle, and just doesn't seem any two ways about it.
Yeah. Well, again, we'll have to see how it goes, but there was some news, Paul. I know we talked about earlier COVID-19 and its impact on our lives, but also it looks like we're going to have basically a summer, and a summer usually for ag retailers and farmers to a degree, because the fields are planted. Usually a lot of time, shows take place, events are being held. But a lot of the June events got canceled a couple of months ago, and the July events are now coming off the table. The latest casualty we found out about this week was the Southwestern Fertilizer Conference, which was supposed to take place, I believe, July 19th through the 23rd in Denver, Colorado, has now been canceled because of COVID-19 and fears of spreading that if you hold a big meeting. So, again, this will be the first time I can remember not traveling through the months of June and July in probably 20 years.
It's interesting. It's not something Southwest Fertilizers is something we've typically gone to because it's such a business intensive meeting. They say something like 3/4 of the fertilizer supply for the year ahead is purchased through that conference through personal meetings, and companies can sit for 10, 12 hours at a time and just do nothing but take meetings and talk about purchasing. So what replaces that, I don't know. Maybe it's more phone calls, more of the old school sales, but it's definitely made going to make a significant impact on activity here through the summer. And I guess next up we'll be watching is the Farm Progress Show. Obviously, that's more focused on the growers that retailers attend. We tend to go to that just to get a sense for what's coming marketing-wise for retailers and what they can expect how they can expect growers to be marketed to coming into the next year, and what maybe some new products and new things that are coming out. So we'll see what happens there. I mean, I assume. You think by that time you probably get maybe a little more normalcy to the extent where they would allow it, but that's usually pretty a packed show, and there's almost no way to police social distancing and something like that. So I guess we'll see. Maybe they open it and then it's a matter of comfort level the farmers have with attending that. But I think that's really the next one up in terms of a significant event that we'll be keeping an eye on to see what happens.
Well, one way our viewers may be able to get some hints of where shows like that, Farm Progress, and maybe other shows in the early fall season, are, if they're going to happen or not, is to pay attention to two things in their states. Number one, of course, would be the schools. If the schools are back in session, chances are the state will be resuming normal programming when it comes to gatherings in some capacity. But the other would be to keep an eye on the state fairs that are normally held in mid-August in a lot of the states. I know as of this morning, the North Dakota State Fair has been canceled. We found out this week the Minnesota State Fair has been canceled. And their folks said they're basically canceling the show because they're, quote unquote, out of runway and can't get off the ground, which I thought was a cute little metaphor, an airline metaphor, considering no one's flying these days. And next up, Paul, I guess we've got Iowa, Illinois, Missouri, and Wisconsin have all promised to make decisions on their state fairs sometime by the end of May to the middle of June. So keep an eye on those 4 states coming up next. I know Nebraska and South Dakota have decided to go ahead with their state fairs at this point. So that's basically where we stand. But yeah, if you want to get an idea if events are going to take place in the state you're looking at going to something in, look at the state fairs. And if they happen, you may be in better shape than if they are being canceled.
Yeah, that makes sense as a bellwether for what's happening in other areas. So interesting. All right, you got anything else, sir?
I do not. I mean, I know I did hear sort of through the grapevine from folks. We've been talking about planting, and heard from somebody in South Dakota and from someone in Indiana. And both of those folks didn't give me any hard numbers in their emails, but said that corn and soybean plantings and wheat plantings in those states are going basically according to schedule and are somewhere around the national averages for this state. So again, the weather staying not so rainy as it was in 2019 is definitely helping.
Well, it's good to hear, being stuck here in the city, it's good to hear out in the country that there's someplace in the world where things are somewhat normal.
Yep. Yes.
All right. Well, that's it for this edition of CropLife Retail Week. We appreciate you joining us. Hang in there, and we'll see you next week.
If you have questions or comments about today's episode of Retail Week, contact us by email or Twitter, or type your message in the comment section below.
Your feedback is important to us. We'll try our best to address your thoughts in next week's episode.
And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.